Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure being here. I love the Brand Innovator events, and I really love this new focus or newer focus on the luxury industry and segment. My name is Carina Ertl. I'm the CMO for Tourneau, now Buchra. We are about to rebrand. We are still going through it. We've been acquired by Buchra in 2018, and we are finally rebranding to Buchra now for the United States. And I run all things marketing, digital, customer service. So it's a fully integrated marketing approach. But I'm also in charge of our certified pre-owned business.
Gonzalo?
So I'm always busy and can never commit to it.
I'm Gonzalo. I lead a family wine business that dates back. My business is predominantly about storytelling, which is one of the questions that I could keep you here for a long time if I were to tell you the whole story. But my family's relationship with wine dates back almost 2 centuries. How myself, I never even considered dedicating my life to wine up until COVID came. I was in finance, not doing anything related to wine, and decided to leave everything and join this exciting business that counts with, we have 5 different wineries across Spain. Some of them date back centuries, as I was saying, and others are very new and with the projects, new exciting projects that we're launching and sort of creating the whole story behind them rather than creating, which is a very marketing word to use. It's more about encompassing, trying to find the best way to tell that story. So from my perspective, it's someone new to a not just the luxury world, from a strategic and marketing role perspective, but also from a being new to the wine industry itself, which has a lot of intricacies when you talk about luxury. It's a very peculiar industry.
Rumor has it you might have a video. Is that true?
I think there is one. I don't know what's going to come up. But I'll give it a shot to mix it up a little bit. Thank you. So that's, Mike, for your benefit, that's just one of the oldest winery that we own today. And it's balancing that heritage, how beautiful that area is, the building that you've seen, with all the news stories, how you make that relevant and how you keep it interesting for all the new and young consumers as well as the older ones.
Who wouldn't want to be there, right? How spectacular, it looked beautiful. So we're going to have a little fun here. So Carina, you just saw that video for the first time. As you think about your brand and the work that you're doing and the transformation that you're going through, when you see a video like that, how does it make you feel?
I want to go there.
Terrible.
Do you have wine samplings afterwards? No, listen. I think what the core points are, right, is what he already mentioned is definitely tradition, definitely like that experience, that feeling, that emotion that is provoked, to your point. Mm-hmm. You want to be there, right? And I think when we look into, again, we are multi-brand retailers, so I cannot speak for like the brands in particular, but what we want to create is obviously also a feeling and an emotion when you walk into our environment. And what the brands want to create is also that perception of like, or not perception because it's real, it's heritage and tradition. watchmaking is one of the oldest industries, and still like every piece is handmade, and we have tons of these beautiful videos with watchmakers that are showcasing you how the watch is being built, how like literally like the maneuver of like putting it together, or even when you go and visit our repair centers, it's just fascinating. And I think that's part of what makes a luxury brand a luxury brand.
Back to you again, Carina, on this one, then I'll circle back to you, Gonzalo. You just said something interesting, right? You curate lots of brands, but you also have your own brand. How do you stitch that together and create your own brand story? And you mentioned an evolution and where you're going. Talk a little bit about how your strategy would then have to be different versus a single brand that has a name and all of that equity that comes with it.
For us, it's about the curation, right? We want to offer like the best curation in this industry in terms of luxury watches and fine jewelry. And it's also most importantly about the experience. We want you to build a relationship with us. We want to host you. We don't see you as someone who comes in and buys a watch. We want to host the community of watch aficionados. I personally want to host a community of female watch collectors and also people that buy their first watch and are looking for like kind of like an education or just like walk me through like what's a great watch to start with. So that's what we're looking for, building community, offering exceptional experiences, and then like obviously building that relationship with our clients.
Amazing. I'll come back to you. I have some more on that one. Gonzalo, your brand is incredibly unique. There's a destination quality to it. Talk to us about your consumers. Where are they? How do they interact with your brand? And how do you find them?
So it's hard in a way. One of the biggest issues you find in the wine industry is the fact that it's hard to access your end consumer. You have the gatekeepers, you have the restaurants, you have the auctioneers, you have the distributors when you're shipping around the world. So it's hard to get access to the end consumer and therefore have strategies that impact them directly. Generally speaking, the wine consumer is people over 35, 40 years old. That's when people start getting to the wine industry. Now we're seeing the trend of people buying, and we were just talking about that earlier, Mike, less of better, or better but less, or more expensive, but less quantities, particularly with wine, which also reduces the type of consumers that we can target. The other end of the spectrum, and it's polarizing, is the very innovative consumers. And that's the younger generations, the much younger generations, which are buying wines in cans, bag-in-box, they're buying mixers, they're buying cocktails with wine. And that's all great as well. And I think that's necessary for people to get into wine. And the moment they reach a certain purchasing power, or a certain maturity in age, in the same way that you don't go and buy art, go see a museum when you're 18 years old, you're the exception. Similar thing happens with wine. So getting those people involved in the wine industry early with those sort of products is great, but it's also about how you keep them, then move them into the luxury side, or paying $100 for a bottle in a restaurant. And that's a journey that takes time. It involves a lot of factors, and it mainly involves convincing those gatekeepers that we were talking about, not just the end consumer.
Be thinking about the destination idea that we talked about earlier. I want to hear more about that. Carina, you mentioned community, creating community. What inspired that work, and why do you believe that that's something that you should passionately do?
I think it's always been our goal, and just for me personally, like I'm always surprised. We have a great, like this is an amazing showroom, but we also have on 57th Street, like right around the corner, 57th and Madison. This is one of our flagship stores. It's 3 stories and it has like 3 bars. And it's not because we love to drink wine, but it's also because we really want to foster that community. We don't want you to just have this. There's also something about opening up spaces, right? Don't have this hesitation or like, oh my God, I'm now touching like a $20,000 like watch piece or like $100K. Like we want you to sit down, relax, have a conversation with us, and engage into this world of watches. And once you kind of like start getting into that world, you keep coming back because it's interesting, it's beautiful. That doesn't mean you buy every time, but you just want to explore, and we want to take you on that journey of exploration. So that's, I think, why for this luxury segment, the exploration, the destination, like all that is very, very important to create that experience. And we want you to like kind of hang out with us. And we've seen even friendships form, like we have a bar on a lower level, and people are just like, oh, what are you interested in right now? And there's suddenly like conversations that form amongst our clients, and we don't even curate that in any way. And then if we can curate it through events formats, through panels, through education, through bringing in a watchmaker, bringing in a certain brand, talking about their heritage and their tradition, then it's even more beautiful because people get inspired and they love to talk about watches.
It's so relatable to me thinking about the watch that's on my wrist and the experience.
You have a story, right?
I have a story that's
with cars.
It's not
it's
just
probably the same
right.
what happens in this space.
Not just a thing on my wrist. I have a story that relates to it, and it conjures up that memory, and I'm creating new experiences with it because the person who gave it to me is here with me this weekend, right? So that's very relatable to me.
And sorry for it, but it's the
No,
moments,
please.
right? Also with the wine, you want to celebrate something, right? You want to celebrate a special birthday, a graduation or something with a beautiful timepiece. You want to celebrate a beautiful moment with a beautiful bottle of wine. So it's about these moments. And I think that will never go away. And that's how we need to market towards it, right? Because even while we are talking about like a downturn in the luxury segment, the moment you have this authenticity and you can create these emotions, I think you're safe to win.
I think to your point, it carries a responsibility with it almost, that you need to make sure that someone that's spending so much money, a relevant amount of money for everyone, whether it's one night for your wedding or one day when you go buy a watch, or whether it's on a holiday, you owe them that responsibility to make sure that the product you give them and the experience around it and the explanation of why they should buy that product and what it represents is true, accurate, and authentic, which is the word you used.
We've heard throughout the day a couple of words, experience. We hear that a lot, right? It's not just the thing, in particular for luxury brands, right? There's an expectation. You look at the wall over there, it's multi-sensory, right? It's not just the finished thing. It's the choices that you get to make along the way. It's at your bar, having that wonderful bottle of wine, talking to other folks in the community about their passion, right? About, what interests them. So there's a destination quality to not just hotels, but to luxury, I believe, when you're having that experience. But there are actual destinations, Gonzalo. So talk to me about, what's coming for you.
So one of the things we decided to work on, and this is a couple of years back, was on how to make it a memorable experience beyond the bottle of wine. And that's not just for our customers, and we can, of course, receive normal customers, but also for our clients. And that was the creation of La Casa Cosme Palacio, which is repurposing, renovating, and launching a new hotel concept at one of the wineries. It's very exclusive. What we ended up deciding was that we were going to launch something that was not accessible just by money. You couldn't just buy your access. It was what we called by invitation only, which was something that hadn't been done before. At least there might be other examples in the world, definitely not in Spain. So it was two layers, and that was one of the things that at the beginning was very challenging, and it created a lot of friction in the organization. Was saying, we're going to invite you to pay a lot of money, but you need an invitation. And people still laugh at that, and that's the reaction you get. You'll get an invitation. You're still going to have to pay, but I'll send you an invitation. So it was going one step beyond and giving that sense of luxury, privacy, and treating each customer very particularly. And obviously, it's not just about going to a very special hotel. It's everything else we organize around it. But Stefano, for example, is giving a good example with Beaumont, and it's a similar sort of thing that we try to do. Anyone that goes there will become a client sooner or later for the rest of their lives, because they won't forget. Those sort of places you don't forget. So that's exceeding our expectations. It's doing extremely well, incredibly, despite not going out there to seek demand and seek customers. We get a lot of inflow of people because it's word of mouth, and that creates a very nice sort of atmosphere for those that end up coming and enjoying the experience.
So I need to ask, how does one get an invitation to that experience?
We'll talk about that later.
But I think it's about access, right? Also, that defines like luxury, like unique access that you wouldn't get otherwise.
No, in all honesty, of course we do that, and we send invitations out to certain clients, certain people. But you can also, we realized that we couldn't be overly exclusive, and that's frowned upon in all industries at one stage. So you can also request your private stay, and the only difference with a normal booking, you can't go on booking.com and make a reservation. You need to speak to us. We need to call, understand what sort of event you want to have, how many people are coming, what experience are you looking for. If we were going to get a request for a stag do, for example, we might say we're not the sort of place for you. And we're very honest and transparent with that. We want to make sure that anyone that comes and is paying that amount of money gets what they expect out of the experience. We don't want to let them down, is the point.
Right. I probably should have said at the top that I work for Epsilon. I run new business development for Epsilon, which is the big logo underneath my picture over there. I've been there for about 6 months. Where's Scott Fernsler? Scott's in the room here. There he is right there. Any hard questions, look for him later because he's going to have more of the answers. I would tell you, though, and I'll stitch this together here, the number one thing we help brands do is to use our data, technology, and media business to create more connected and consistent conversations. Says easy, does hard, right? Think across time and across channels and increasingly more complex. Let's talk about consumer behavior and how you're connecting, Carina, with your consumers today, and take me into that world of data and metrics and how you measure success.
Well, there's obviously, CRM is key. Like, you can't do it without CRM. So it's especially for luxury, it's super important that we know what the clients have looked at, what the birthdays are, any special anniversaries. Like, the more information we get, the more unique and personalized we can make the experience, or even just a visit to the store. Like, if we have you as an existing client and you've been with us, let's say, for 1 or 2 years, and we know what you're looking for, but we also know what you prefer in terms of beverage or food, we can make and create a unique and special experience just for a regular store visit. So it's absolutely key to us. It's also obviously then key on that one is the personalized level with existing clients, but then obviously also understanding where your clients come from, especially with marketing. Did I get you through an out of home? Did I get you through a digital campaign? Like, how was that first point of entry into our world? So it's absolutely key, definitely. Even so, I have to say it's still a growth and a learning journey, because we know, like, for classic luxury brands, like, we haven't adapted we were not the first movers, let's put it that way. And also the execution is still very, which I think is part of luxury manual, right? I send you an email, yes, but I also like to send handwritten notes.
Not to nerd out on data, but you have the luxury of first-party data too, because they're coming into your stores and buying from you. Have a think about how you would then potentially share with some of the brands that you feature, and how you make them aware of that consumer experience too. I'll come back to you, though, for the answer. Gonzalo, your business is different, right? Very kind of high-touch, bespoke. You mentioned invitation only. Of course, that's not the only way to interact with your brand. How do you think about staying abreast of changing consumer behavior and using data and some of those other things to do that?
We're trying to integrate data as much as we can into our business, and that's something that takes time because of the challenges I mentioned of how we sell our products, which is usually through partners. Have a percentage of, a small percentage, but a percentage of, increasingly large percentage of our sales are online through our direct channels. Admittedly, there's a big debate of whether you should be, or where the industry is going to take, whether they're going to buy directly from, in our case, the winery, or from one of the platforms. But we can gather a lot of data from there. And then the other sort of vertical that we are spending a lot of time on is obviously that CRM, but more on the digital marketing side. What conversations are created around our brands? How do they respond to certain posts and campaigns that we launch? When we work with a partner, with an influencer, when we do anything that's related to the brand, we try and measure and understand why that's happened or whatnot. But it's a challenge because of the channels or how we sell our products.
So, Carina, back to my comment earlier. Have you had any success in sharing data, with partners to?
We don't.
You don't?
We don't share data, but we share insights on journeys,
sure.
right? So segmentation, like this is a first-time buyer. So what was the second buy like a year later, or 6 months later, or 2 years later? Like the journey for us, that's critical to understand.
That makes sense. So let's pivot back to authenticity, and with a little word play there. When I say authenticity to you, Gonzalo, through the lens of your brand, what does that mean?
For me, it's very clear. It's transparency and honesty. I think it's one of the things that I miss the most when in our industry is actually being able to tell what's behind a bottle of wine. 99.9% of consumers don't know much about wine, including myself. So you want to make sure that the brand that's selling to you is what's in the bottle is honest and you're paying a fair price. You don't want any tricks. You don't want any. You want consistency over the years, and we want to capture our customers in the journey that we're in. We're an evolving company. As I mentioned, we have wineries that date back centuries, but we can't only look at the past. We need to tell our new story, and we need to tell about how we're evolving, what's going to be of us in 2 or 3 decades. So it's taking them along with us in that journey and not being afraid of making mistakes. A lot of the times I find that the least authentic brands, or the most authentic brands, let's put it positively, are those that make mistakes and tell the customers why they've made it, why not, and how they're going to resolve it. So for us, it's being very transparent with everything we do.
You want to take that one too, authenticity?
Sure. I think it goes, it's like a 360 because it's also from a brand perspective, it's not just like the brand, or in our case, like also the product. It's like brand, product, people, like your whole company. Like authenticity starts with values, but then it's also when it comes to the product, it's about the heritage, like how is every piece made, right? In a watch, you have like thousands of little pieces. You want to really understand where all these pieces come from, how they are made. It's about craftsmanship. It's about tradition. And then we go even further into authentication programs for our certified pre-owned, where we have Rolex actually then taking pieces back and looking at it and giving them like that stamp of authenticity that this is a fully authentic watch manufactured by Rolex. So I think it goes like through so many levels of an organization, including culture and values. And only if you hit all of them, then I think that's truly authenticity.
That's a strong story to authenticate with a seal of approval, right? The proof that's in it. I was thinking about, I don't know why, watches, probably because I was going to meet you, when the F1 team is talking about breaking down the car into thousands of little pieces and having to reassemble it. It's like they're breaking down a watch and putting all those pieces back together, as a craftsman.
You don't want to try it at home.
No, I don't. You're right. By the way, we haven't gone to the audience much for questions throughout the day. If you all have any, just give me a wave or stand up and shout. Happy to shut up and hand the mic to you. I'm going to move to crystal ball, right? Future focus. You think about your business and where it's been and all the learnings and how you apply that to your vision of where you want to go. So I'll start with you, Carina. Teleport us into the future and talk to me about what excites you most about where you're going.
I think it's always such an interesting question. I think we have a lot still to do. Like, as I said before, there's a growth, like still to optimize existing systems and software solutions, to like optimize the website and the experience online. We're obviously always like looking into, like we have these, like internal meetings where we look into like AI, or like years ago it was like blockchain and NFTs. So we're looking at all these things, but at the end of the day, I think we will be successful future forward because we always come back to the authenticity and to the heritage and the tradition and the hospitality and the experience.
I would have been disappointed if that wasn't your answer, just given the tradition and the authenticity, how important it is to the products that you market and sell. Gonzalo, how about you? Right? I expect I'm going to get a similar answer, but you tell me, like where the business is going and how it might be changing.
So I'll split into one. What excites me the most, which is seeing how, and the wine industry is not really about, at least in our case, and there's obviously a lot of different examples, but when you're talking about high-end wineries, they're boutique projects and growth is limited, so it's not really about growth, it's about recognition, brand awareness, a lot of the topics we've discussed today, reaching the right consumers, being in the right places, having and one of the, as Brent says, obviously one of the biggest most important value propositions in wine is scarcity. So you need to manage that very carefully. So I'm excited to see that brand awareness grow, not just of some of the brands that are better known globally and we sell in over 40 countries, but of the new projects as well, and seeing those go through and how we create that story, how people receive it, and what criticism we get, and how we can improve over time. So it's, I enjoy the part that it's in our business that is very long term, but at the same time very challenging, and there's intricacies on a day-to-day basis. And on the challenge side, perhaps, or what risks we see in our industry, I think one of the biggest one or two are probably, if I were to add a third, which is the polarizing aspect of the market. So if you're stuck in the middle, you're going to struggle. Bear in mind, it's a very, very fragmented segment. Only in Spain, there's 4,000 wineries, 30,000 brands. And think about the US, Italy, France, and the French and the Italians are better at marketing than we are. So it's very competitive. So that's one challenge. The second one is sustainability and being an agricultural product, fully vertically integrated, but an agricultural product, we're at risk of climate change and how we act to that, and how taste changes with climate change and how we adapt to that. Obviously, also waste with the bottles, with the glasses. So sustainability is a big aspect for us, and we do spend a lot of time on it. We're carbon neutral for a start. And then the third one that I was going to mention is health and alcohol, or moderation in alcohol consumption. And there, despite it not playing in our favor in terms of promoting our product and consumption, I think it's our duty to be honest about the risks that entail alcohol consumption and educating our consumers in the spirit of transparency and authenticity that we were discussing earlier, telling them the truth so that they consume it for longer, but in a more balanced and healthy environmental or way.
It's a delicate balance, it sounds like, between scale and scarcity and transparency, all those things coming together. How much time do we have? Thank you. Yes, sure.
Gonzalo, I'd love to hear you talk a bit about launching a new brand. And as you are working on these very storied, established brands, what opportunity did you see in the market in launching something new, and how have you gone about that? Luxury brands tend not to launch entirely new things, and I'd be really curious to hear about what you've learned by doing that.
So we're in a journey of transforming. We used to have a broader portfolio of products, and when I took over, we decided to, in leading the company, we decided to focus only on the top end of the portfolio. So that meant getting rid of some of the brands, reducing our portfolio, and launching new things that were more akin to that sort of consumer. There is a merit in having a portfolio, so that was the reason, or having a variety of products. Not too many, but not too few either. So that was one of the reasons. There's certain regions in Spain that you have to be present to be a global player and to be relevant when you're exporting to the US, for example. So that was the reason why we thought we had to do it. How we've done it, I think, is again a fine balance between over-marketing, over-telling a story in an industry like the wine industry, which is very delicate, and it's, except for champagne, you will hardly see very aggressive marketing campaigns in the wine industry for a reason, because you're talking scarcity. So if you're overselling your product, that can have a negative effect on you. So it's been more about targeting very specific opinion leaders, very specific people in the industry, and telling them bring them along with our journey, and explaining a bit of what we discussed today and what we're trying to do as a company more broadly, and how that's portrayed in a specific brand or a specific project, which is an example of where we want to go in the future. So it's a balance between telling the story, but being a bit secretive and telling only the right people at the right time.
Carina, you're going to get the last question, and it's selfishly a curious question for me. I have 5 children, none of whom wear electronic watches. They all wear timepieces. It's interesting, right? You know, the generations that are coming. Is there a resurgence in, interest in classic timepieces versus wearables?
I don't have numbers to prove it, but we definitely see it in the store, or also what we host in terms of event formats. So every time we get we do a lot of partnership programming. So last year we did a bigger collaboration with Hypebeast, for example, to get that audience into the store. And the moment you start talking about watches and you introduce them, and sometimes that introduction is through the certified pre-owned program, they just it's usually love at first sight. And it's also interesting because there is a tendency to make that biggest purchase as well. Instead of buying a few branded apparel, there is more of an interest to buy something that's more sustainable and has more longevity, definitely.
Yeah, one of my sons rewarded himself with a nice timepiece when he got a promotion. I was hoping he would actually move out of my house at that point, but apparently the watch was more important than paying his own rent. So thank you so much for leaning in with us. Gonzalo, Carina, thank you so much for sharing with the audience.